One of the most dangerous moments in Facebook advertising is when a campaign finally starts performing well. Because honestly, usually when many scaling mistakes begin, at first everything feels exciting. ROAS looks strong. Sales increase consistently. Confidence grows quickly. And naturally, marketers want faster growth immediately. Higher budgets, more reach, more momentum. Because emotionally, it feels like the campaign has finally figured itself out. But then something frustrating starts happening. Performance becomes unstable. Costs start increasing. ROAS begins dropping unexpectedly. And suddenly, the campaign that looked profitable no longer behaves the same way at all. Now the pressure builds very quickly because clients start asking difficult questions immediately. What changed? Why is performance dropping? Did scaling break the campaign? And honestly, many times, the campaign did not fail randomly. Scaling mistakes slowly created the instability underneath. Now this is where many marketers make things even worse. They react emotionally. Budgets change aggressively. New creatives launch too quickly. Targeting gets modified constantly. And instead of stabilizing the campaign, the system becomes even more chaotic afterward. If you've ever experienced campaigns performing well before scaling and then collapsing once growth started, you're definitely not alone. Because this happens constantly in meta advertising. And in this video, we're going to break down the biggest meta ad scaling mistakes, why profitable campaigns become unstable during growth, and how experienced marketers scale campaigns without emotionally damaging performance. Because once you understand these mistakes properly, you stop treating scaling like emotional momentum and start treating it like a controlled strategic process instead. One of the biggest meta ad scaling mistakes is increasing budgets too aggressively, too quickly. And honestly, this mistake destroys more profitable campaigns than many marketers realize. At first, the campaign performs well. ROAS looks exciting. Sales increase consistently. Confidence grows rapidly. So emotionally, scaling fast feels completely logical. Because if the campaign is already profitable, spending more money should create even more results. But Meta's system does not always adapt smoothly to aggressive growth. And this is where many campaigns begin becoming unstable underneath. As budgets increase rapidly, Facebook suddenly needs much larger amounts of traffic very quickly. Audience behavior shifts. Traffic quality changes. Delivery patterns become less stable. And slowly, the balance that originally made the campaign profitable starts weakening underneath. Now, many marketers panic because the campaign still spends money successfully, but ROAS no longer behaves the same way as before. Costs rise faster. Conversions fluctuate. Performance becomes inconsistent. And instead of slowing down strategically, many marketers continue forcing even more aggressive scaling afterward. Now the instability becomes worse. This is why experienced marketers scale gradually whenever possible, not emotionally. They monitor buyer quality, audience responsiveness, conversion consistency, stability patterns, because successful scaling is not just about increasing spend quickly. It's about protecting campaign stability while growth happens. And honestly, many profitable campaigns do not collapse because scaling was impossible. They collapse because growth happened faster than the system could stabilize properly. Another major meta ad scaling mistake is focusing too much on traffic volume while ignoring traffic quality completely. And honestly, this mistake quietly destroys many campaigns after scaling begins. At smaller budgets, Facebook usually has enough strong audience signals available to maintain efficient delivery. The system stays selective. Buyer quality feels stronger, conversions remain more consistent. But once budgets increase aggressively, Facebook suddenly needs far more traffic very quickly. And this is where campaign behavior starts changing underneath, because now the algorithm begins expanding beyond the original high-performing audience pool. Traffic volume increases. Reach expands wider. But slowly, buyer intent often becomes weaker underneath the campaign. Now, something confusing happens. The campaign may still generate clicks, leads, engagement, but emotionally, the traffic no longer behaves the same way as before scaling. Lead quality weakens. Conversions become inconsistent. ROAS starts fluctuating more aggressively. And many marketers panic because the campaign still looks active on the surface. But underneath, the quality of people entering the funnel has changed significantly. This becomes even more dangerous when marketers keep forcing higher budgets during unstable performance periods. Because over time, Facebook may prioritize easier expansion instead of stronger buyer intent. This is why experienced marketers monitor traffic quality constantly during scaling phases. Not just spend levels or click volume. They analyze buyer behavior, conversion quality, lead intent, long-term customer value. Because successful scaling is not only about reaching more people, it's about protecting the quality of the people entering the system while growth happens. And honestly, many campaigns don't collapse because scaling itself was wrong. They collapse because buyer quality slowly weakened underneath aggressive expansion. Another major meta-ad scaling mistake is relying on the same creatives for too long while budgets continue increasing aggressively. And honestly, this problem becomes much more dangerous during scaling phases. At smaller budgets, Facebook can distribute exposure more selectively. The audience sees the creative less frequently. Attention stays stronger. Engagement feels more natural. And performance often remains stable for longer periods. But once scaling begins aggressively, exposure pressure increases much faster underneath the campaign. More people see the same messaging repeatedly. Frequency rises faster. Audience responsiveness weakens sooner. And slowly, the emotional impact of the creative begins fading underneath the system. Now, something frustrating starts happening. The ads still generate impressions. Traffic still arrives. But emotionally, the audience no longer reacts the same way as before. The hook feels familiar. The message loses urgency. Curiosity weakens. And over time, conversion momentum starts collapsing even though the creative technically remains active. This becomes even worse when marketers continue scaling without refreshing creative angles strategically. Because Facebook keeps pushing the same messaging harder and harder into the audience. And eventually, attention fatigue starts damaging ROAS much faster than expected. This is why experienced marketers prepare for creative fatigue early during scaling phases, not after performance collapses completely. They test new hooks, new angles, new messaging styles, new emotional triggers. Because successful scaling is not just about increasing reach. It's about maintaining emotional responsiveness while exposure pressure increases underneath the campaign. And honestly, many campaigns don't fail because the offer stopped working. They fail because the audience emotionally stopped responding to the same creative repeatedly. One of the most dangerous meta-ad scaling mistakes is changing too many things too quickly once performance becomes unstable. And honestly, this mistake destroys many campaigns that could have recovered successfully. At first, scaling creates natural volatility. ROAS fluctuates. Costs increase temporarily. Performance becomes less predictable. And emotionally, this uncertainty makes many marketers panic very quickly. Now they start reacting aggressively to every fluctuation. Budgets change constantly. New creatives launch suddenly. Targeting structures get modified rapidly. And for a moment, it feels productive emotionally because activity creates the illusion of control. But underneath, the campaign starts losing consistency completely. Facebook's system struggles to stabilize. Learning patterns keep shifting. Audience behavior becomes harder to understand. And slowly, the campaign becomes more chaotic than the original scaling problem itself. This is why experienced marketers recover unstable scaling campaigns very differently. Not emotionally, Instead of changing everything at once, they isolate variables carefully, one major adjustment at a time, one measurable change at a time. Because successful optimization depends on understanding cause and effect clearly. And when too many changes happen simultaneously, nobody truly understands what actually improved or damaged performance anymore. This becomes especially dangerous during scaling phases, because volatility already exists naturally inside the system, and emotional over-optimization often amplifies instability even further. And honestly, many campaigns don't collapse because scaling failed technically. They collapse because marketers emotionally destabilize the system while trying to fix short-term fluctuations too aggressively. Another major meta-ad scaling mistake is scaling campaigns based more on client pressure than actual campaign stability. And honestly, this happens far more often than many marketers admit. At first, performance looks exciting. ROAS increases. Sales improve. Clients become more confident quickly. And naturally, expectations start rising immediately afterward. Clients want faster growth, higher budgets, more leads, bigger results, because emotionally, strong early performance creates urgency. Now something dangerous starts happening. Instead of scaling strategically, marketers begin scaling emotionally to satisfy pressure faster. Budgets increase too aggressively. Campaigns expand before stability fully develops. Creative testing gets rushed. And slowly, the campaign becomes more unstable underneath the pressure. Now ROAS starts fluctuating. Traffic quality weakens. Performance becomes less predictable. And instead of slowing down strategically, many marketers continue forcing growth because expectations already became emotionally attached to the earlier results. This creates a very dangerous cycle. Pressure increases. Decision-making becomes reactive. Optimization loses clarity. And eventually, the campaign starts collapsing underneath emotional growth expectations instead of technical strategy. This is why experienced marketers manage scaling conversations very carefully, not just campaign settings. They prepare clients for volatility, stabilization periods, traffic quality shifts, temporary fluctuations during growth. Because successful scaling is not just about increasing budgets quickly. It's about protecting decision-making quality while emotional pressure increases around the campaign. And honestly, many profitable campaigns don't fail because scaling was impossible. They fail because emotional pressure pushed growth faster than the system could realistically stabilize underneath. One of the biggest meta-ad scaling mistakes is becoming emotionally obsessed with daily ROAS fluctuations during growth phases. And honestly, this mistake quietly destabilizes many campaigns that could have scaled successfully over time. Because once budgets increase, volatility naturally increases inside the system. Traffic behavior shifts faster. Audience responsiveness fluctuates more. Performance becomes less predictable day by day. And emotionally, this uncertainty makes many marketers extremely uncomfortable. Now they begin monitoring performance constantly. One weak day creates panic. One strong day creates overconfidence. And suddenly, optimization decisions become emotional reactions instead of strategic decisions. Budgets increase too aggressively after short-term success. Budgets get reduced too quickly after temporary drops. New creatives launch emotionally. Campaign structures keep shifting constantly. Now something dangerous starts happening underneath. The campaign loses consistency completely. Facebook's system struggles to stabilize. Learning patterns keep resetting. Audience behavior becomes harder to understand clearly. And instead of controlled scaling, the campaign enters a cycle of emotional volatility. This is why experienced marketers think very differently during scaling phases. They understand something important. Stable, long-term growth rarely looks emotionally stable every single day. So instead of reacting emotionally to short-term fluctuations, They focus on broader performance patterns over time. They monitor weekly trends, buyer quality, conversion consistency, long-term efficiency, because successful scaling requires emotional patience during natural volatility. And honestly, many campaigns don't fail because scaling was impossible technically. They fail because marketers emotionally chase perfect daily ROAS during a naturally unstable growth phase. One of the most overlooked meta ad scaling mistakes is increasing budgets aggressively without expanding the creative system underneath the campaign. And honestly, this problem quietly destroys scalability much faster than many marketers realize. At first, one or two strong creatives may perform extremely well. ROAS looks healthy. Conversions stay consistent. The campaign feels stable. And naturally, marketers start increasing budgets confidently. But then something important starts happening underneath the system. The campaign begins reaching larger and larger audience pools. Exposure pressure increases. Audience variety expands. Behavior patterns become less predictable. And slowly, the original creatives stop connecting emotionally with the larger audience environment the same way. Now something frustrating happens. The campaign still spends aggressively. Traffic still arrives. But emotionally, responsiveness starts weakening underneath the scaling pressure. This becomes especially dangerous when campaigns rely too heavily on only a few winning creatives. Because eventually, the campaign outgrows the emotional range of the creative system itself. Different audiences respond differently. Different motivations require different messaging angles. And without enough creative diversity, scaling efficiency starts weakening much faster than expected. This is why experienced marketers treat creative expansion as part of scaling itself, not as an afterthought. They continuously test new hooks, new emotional angles, new messaging styles, new audience psychology approaches. Because successful scaling is not just about increasing spend levels. It's about expanding the campaign's emotional adaptability while reach continues growing. And honestly, many campaigns don't fail because the offer stopped working. They fail because the creative system never evolved fast enough for the larger audience environment created by scaling. When experienced marketers scale meta ads campaigns, they usually approach growth very differently from beginners. Because beginners often focus only on increasing results quickly. More budget, more traffic, more momentum. And emotionally, rapid scaling feels exciting. But experienced marketers understand something much deeper. Scaling changes the entire behavior of the campaign underneath. So instead of chasing aggressive growth emotionally, they focus first on protecting stability. At the beginning of scaling, they monitor how the system reacts carefully, not just revenue numbers. They analyze buyer quality, audience responsiveness, conversion consistency, creative fatigue patterns. Because maintaining healthy performance during growth matters more than temporary emotional excitement. Experienced marketers also scale more gradually whenever possible. Not because growth is bad, but because Meta's system needs time to adapt to larger budget environments properly. They avoid reacting emotionally to short-term volatility. Instead, they focus on broader behavioral patterns over time. This becomes especially important during unstable periods because scaling naturally creates fluctuations inside the system. And if marketers overreact constantly, the campaign often becomes harder to stabilize afterward. This is also why experienced advertisers prepare for instability before it happens. They expand creatives early, test audience variations proactively, monitor behavioral changes carefully. Because successful scaling is not just about spending more money successfully. It's about increasing growth while protecting the health of the campaign underneath. And honestly, this becomes one of the biggest differences between emotional scaling and professional scaling. Beginners chase momentum aggressively. Experienced marketers protect stability while growth happens. One of the biggest realizations experienced marketers eventually learn about scaling is that many meta ads campaigns don't collapse because of Facebook itself. And honestly, they collapse because emotional decision making slowly destroys stability underneath the campaign. At first, scaling pressure feels exciting. Higher budgets, more sales, more momentum. But once performance starts fluctuating, emotional pressure increases everywhere very quickly. Clients become anxious. Daily ROAS feels unpredictable. Confidence starts weakening. And naturally, marketers begin reacting emotionally to uncertainty. Now, many scaling mistakes start happening at the same time. Budgets change too aggressively. Creatives rotate emotionally. Targeting structures shift constantly. And slowly, the campaign loses consistency underneath all the reactions. Now, Meta's system struggles to stabilize properly. Learning patterns keep changing. Audience behavior becomes harder to understand clearly. And instead of controlled optimization, the campaign enters a cycle of emotional instability. This is why experienced marketers behave very differently during scaling volatility. Instead of chasing emotional certainty every day, they focus on maintaining strategic clarity under pressure. Because they understand something important. Scaling naturally creates instability at times. Temporary fluctuations do not automatically mean the campaign is broken completely. And honestly, many campaigns that could have recovered successfully get emotionally destroyed before the system ever had enough time to stabilize properly. This is why emotional discipline becomes one of the most important scaling skills in meta advertising. Because successful scaling is not just about understanding ads technically. It's about making stable decisions while uncertainty still exists around the campaign. And honestly, this becomes one of the biggest differences between beginner marketers and experienced advertisers over time. Beginners often react emotionally to volatility. Experienced marketers manage volatility without emotionally destabilizing the system underneath. One of the biggest mindset shifts in meta advertising is realizing that rapid growth and controlled scaling are not always the same thing. And honestly, many marketers only fully understand this after experiencing unstable campaigns themselves. At the beginning of scaling, growth feels exciting, higher budgets, more momentum, more revenue, and emotionally, fast expansion feels like success. But over time, experienced marketers begin understanding something much deeper. Sustainable scaling depends on stability, not emotional acceleration. Because once campaigns start scaling aggressively, everything inside the system becomes more sensitive. Traffic quality changes faster. Creative fatigue happens faster. Audience responsiveness shifts faster. And if marketers react emotionally to every fluctuation, the campaign slowly loses consistency underneath the pressure. This is why experienced advertisers think very differently during growth phases. Instead of chasing emotional momentum constantly, they focus on maintaining healthy systems over longer periods of time. They protect audience quality, creative adaptability, conversion consistency, strategic decision making, because successful scaling is not just about increasing spend levels successfully. It's about increasing growth without emotionally destabilizing the campaign underneath. And honestly, this becomes one of the biggest differences between beginner marketers and experienced operators over time. Beginners often chase growth emotionally after early success. Experienced marketers scale carefully while protecting long-term stability first. Because real meta ad success is not just about creating momentum quickly. It's about managing growth without damaging the system that created the success in the first place. And once marketers truly understand this, scaling stops feeling like emotional gambling and starts becoming a much more controlled strategic process instead. Now, if this video helped you understand the biggest meta ad scaling mistakes more clearly, make sure to explore the other videos already available on the channel as well. We've also started breaking down ROAS instability, Facebook conversion problems, meta ads recovery psychology, scaling pressure, and deeper digital marketing execution strategies. Because once you understand how these systems connect together, you stop reacting emotionally to campaign volatility and start managing growth much more strategically over time. Thanks for watching, stay connected, and I'll see you in the next video.